Okay, so today we're looking at the structure of the education system. And by the end of this video, you should be able to describe and explain the structure of education, exploring some Marxist views on education. And then in the actual lesson, I am going to be spending some time with you just learning a few of the different types of school and comparing and contrasting them, looking at advantages and disadvantages. So that's the big picture. That's how it all links together. So let's crack on. So what is the structure of education then? Well, it's quite simply the structure you've been through, starting with preschool, early years education into primary, then secondary, further education, which is sixth form, college, and then finally higher education, which is university. Here's a little bit more information on these different stages in the structure of education. When you're at nursery, the government pays for free nursery spots for children who are 3 and 4-year-old, and this is usually in nurseries and also nursery classes that happen in some primary schools. Then when you move into primary education, state schools cater for boys and girls between the ages of 4 and 11 years old. Then when you get to secondary school, most state secondary schools cater for both boys and girls aged 11 to 16. Now some secondary schools like ours have sixth forms, and secondary schools often include different kinds of schools like grammar schools, comprehensive, faith, specialist, but we'll go into those in a bit more detail in class. And then the purple box is further education, and this is when you're 16 and over. Includes A-levels and vocational courses like BTECs, and it's provided in sixth forms and colleges across the country. Finally, you move on to university, where you have a degree level of study. Some colleges are starting to provide some degree level study as well, and there's quite a lot of different degrees that you can get when you get to university. Excellent. Okay. Now, last video we had a look at the functionalist view of education. And functionalist, just as a little reminder, argues that education gets you ready to play your part in society. And they very strongly believe in this idea of meritocracy, where you can work hard, and if you work hard like everybody else, you have the same opportunities to succeed. However, some people and some sociologists really argue that meritocracy is not really possible, and that actually even argue that it's a myth. So they say it is the myth of meritocracy. And these sociologists argue that the structure of the education system is completely unfair. So I'm going to give you a few seconds to think about everything else you've done in sociology and try and guess what sociologist or what group of sociologists would argue this point. Okay, so indeed it is the Marxists who argue this. And using the picture, I want you to try and remember all the things we've already said and discussed about how Marxists view society. If you've not done Marx yet, then again use the picture to try and work out just how Marx would describe society. Ask yourself questions like who's at the top and who's at the bottom. Are there more or less people at the top and at the bottom? What's happening to the people who are at the bottom? Different big questions underlie that. Okay, so here's the explanation. Marx argues that everything in our society is set up to benefit the rich at the expense of the working class. So at the very top, Marx argued that there was a small group, or there are a small group of people called the bourgeoisie. And these are the extremely rich and powerful people who basically have all of the power and own all the means of producing and the means of social mobility, really. And at the very bottom of the triangle, you have the majority of the population, and he called the people at the bottom the proletariat. And Marx basically believed that everything in society, including education, is in place to reinforce these social inequalities in our society. So, if you go to a state school, like an academy, you are being programmed to work hard, but you are being programmed to work hard for the rich ruling class. If you are in the ruling class or bourgeoisie, then your children go to private schools to get a better education so that they can then keep ruling the poor working classes when they grow up and go to work. So if we look back at the picture we had at the start, all the people who are basically above the line will be the bourgeoisie and petty bourgeoisie, and these are going to be people who are educated in private school. The children educated in private school then automatically will hold positions of greater power and positions that give them more money. And then the proletariat at the bottom are those educated in state schools. So Marxists would very much argue that meritocracy is not possible, that it's a very unfair system, and that education itself is unfair, and that by telling the proletariat working classes that such a thing as meritocracy does exist just motivates them to work harder to try and climb the ladder, but in actual fact their hard work is benefiting the bourgeoisie. So you need to have a think about that, because we'll spend a little bit of time in class discussing it, evaluating it, and I'd like to know your opinion on it. Do you agree with this model? Do you think this is true? What problems can you think about when looking at the Marxist view of education? Okay, this is a short video, and this is the end. I just wanted to show you the worksheet you will be getting in class. So once we've had some evaluation exercises and discussions, we are going to be doing quite a lot of work on different types of schools that are listed down the left-hand side. There are 9 different types of school that you need to know. And more importantly, we're going to work together to just work on the possible advantages and disadvantages of these different types of school. Okay.